Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm Scott Forcino from Real Brokerage, based in New York City and now Florida. I have with me today Zeke Samples from Grow Mortgage and Christine Nargi from the Selling Paradise Group with KW South Shore in great area in Florida. So I'm really happy we have a chance. Today is June 14th, so I want to give that data so we can reference the market and how it stands now. I founded PlugIntro just so people can be heard and can reach their target audience and give others the chance to promote their business as well. So it works really well. Folks, what's up in real estate in your market?
Go ahead, Christine.
Go ahead. Okay. Actually, the market's kind of slow in Apollo Beach, which is just like an outskirts of Tampa. We have 201 homes for sale in Apollo Beach, and 38 of those are new construction. So we don't have a lot of homes. I mean, it's a lot more than it was over COVID, but it's still not a lot. Home prices are still increasing. We have some home prices that are increasing in a good way, and then we have some of the COVID pricing that sellers and sellers agents think is still acceptable. However, running some numbers today, I found that even though home prices are still increasing, buyers are not paying full price anymore. Actually, in May, home prices from list price to sold price went down 21% in Apollo Beach.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
and
it ran up and came down.
Say that again?
It ran up and came down.
Yes. And in June, just so far in the last 2 weeks, home prices from list to sold has come down 23% in the price. So, I mean, our values are still increasing. It's just that price difference, that percentage difference is the overpricing that the agents are allowing and sellers are trying to demand. And the buyers they're not having it anymore.
Well, was that called years ago buying a listing?
Yes. Yes.
So Zeke, has that affected any appraisals or any kind of LTV for you?
Appraisals can be interesting. I recently did a bus tour with some agents that were invited or that joined in on it to ask an appraiser. It was kind of a Q&A, and we structured it with 3 comps, and then we ended up at the subject property as the last stop. And there we had lunch inside the house, and it was great to always get his thoughts on everything because he has a real pulse on what is going on and what he's seen. And just going over the factors of location, I feel like was one of the main takeaways. In Christine and I's market, a lot of construction, a lot of growth is going on, a lot of 2 grocery stores within slingshot toss of each other. So there's a lot of things that are creating the hype and the want to be here feel. Roads are already expanding. There's still some traffic, but I know once that catches up, that's going to even make it look more beautiful from the highway, even with off the exit ramp. So I think that appraisers are factoring some of that in. There's tons of schools around here, a lot of really good schools, and that's a good selling tool as well that always factors into an appraisal. But appraisals are interesting in a sense of their value because the appraisers don't have to ever go, they're not incentivized to go above what the contract states. You know, they get a copy of the contract says $500,000. They don't have to say it's 530,000. They sometimes, even the appraisals we've seen lately are to the dollar. So if it's 500,500, it seems to be a $500,500 appraisal. So it's definitely kind of staying pace. I don't see it going under or going below.
Interesting. That's great because I know as markets change, especially with the increase in prices, I know that years ago when this happened, banks would try to underappraise, so have a little bit more tolerable loan to value, and that has not happened, it seems.
Right. One other thing that I'd like to point out, though, is since this is going to be seen by people all over the country, we're talking about the Tampa market in Florida. National news has a gloom and doom depending on where you're located, and we're not gloom and doom here. We're bright and sunny and full of paradise. So just That's so we wanted, I just want to make that clear that this is Tampa and our market here.
And I'm glad you said that, because I was with kind of his think tank recently in Jupiter, Florida, and they said people are reading the national news and it's, as you say, doom and gloom or scary. And they said, listen, it's not indicative of this market. We live in a place that people vacation, and people are second homes, and even retirees who cashed out up north, and now they're buying stuff simply because they want to. And there's a lot of reminiscence of this prior crazy market. They just became aware of places that they want to live.
Right. Yes. It became more suitable for them.
Yeah, more practical, and even other things like the weather, no winter, and the tax consequences are so attractive. So yeah, that's a really great point to let people know that you're different than others and don't believe the hype, so to speak.
Right.
Right. So there's no more over ask and more negotiation. How about, are people looking for kind of benefits like seller paid closing costs? Is that a way to address the increase in rates?
Yes. I mean, like the last couple of deals that I've had, buyers were asking for closing costs, or they wanted a price reduction. And I encouraged my seller to not offer a price reduction, but to offer whatever. If the house was 500,000 and the buyer wanted to pay 480, I said, no, how about 500, but my seller will give you 20,000 towards closing costs, because it saves the seller money. I mean, it gives them a little bit more money, and then the buyer saves more money that way. So it also helps hold the home values too.
Right. And Zeke, what's your position on that? I mean, when you hear that a seller does that and you learn about that in the contract, what can you do with that for the buyer?
Well, we've talked about in past videos, it's great for incentivizing buying a rate down at this time. There was a past video you and I completed where the recent hype, all these lenders were talking about 2-1 buy downs, and how I said I was one of the few that was against that didn't believe that was a good idea. And you said, yeah, me too. And we kind of jumped on the same bandwagon because the benefit isn't really there like it would be if it was a permanent buy down. So there's definitely some incentives in doing that way. And then recently I've also mentioned to some of my agents that what they could do in the MLS is, instead of lowering that purchase price, you could put in there, seller agrees to contribute 2% or whatever dollar value they want to put in there. For this example, let's say 2% towards closing costs and prepays using approved lender. And that approved lender could be me, because now if the agent has this listing and knows me or wants me on there, I can keep it streamlined for both parties, because now we can be fast. We have the communication guaranteed, so it helps with a lot of those extra pieces that are always questions during the process, which is, ease of the transaction, communication.
Right. And I think there's really two pieces of that puzzle. One is how it affects the consumer and the clients, the people you serve, but also from a marketing position, it demonstrates that you're a greater expertise. And Zeke is known as the guy that can maybe introduce this idea to the idea to listing agents and sellers, so they have a greater connection. Because I'm going to bet that a lot of realtors, what you did, Christine, don't know, don't do. And from your perspective, I think that the client and the seller says, wow, Christine utilized this in really innovative approach, and we got faster offers. Our house was the most attractive property on the market. I mean, how could you not be flooded with buyer attention?
I just think that's the best way all around for sellers and the buyer, is do a seller's concession at closing. It just benefits everybody so much more. It really does.
Yeah, we're fortunate we have that tool, because in the prior market you didn't. I mean, why would a seller want to pay anything for anyone? Right. Yeah. So a lot of crises become an opportunity to excel, and that's interesting. So what do you foresee? I mean, rates are the big dirty topic in this nation, Zeke. I mean, what do you say? What can be done? Where do you see it?
Well, the average national rate right now is around 6.7. Of course, it depends on credit score, down payment, those kind of things. But the Fed spoke today as well. So it's kind of a interesting time to have this video and also have that question answered. Markets usually respond in a scarce way in the very beginning, and then, which means they might raise basis points cost, which means that the cost of the rate's higher prior to the announcement, and then it kind of tapers off afterwards. It's definitely not a day to lock anybody in, but there's still volatility. Yesterday the inflation numbers were lower than expected, which is a positive. So I haven't heard the announcements because they happened around the beginning of our video time, but it's definitely something that is always a question in the buyer's mind. But then we need to approach it as selling tools, like Christine and I have mentioned already. Incentivized to get them still into the home and help buy an interest rate down, things like that we can do to help them. People are also looking towards down payment assistance programs right now. And I know my heartfelt belief is that, there's not everybody's a home buyer. So if you don't have money in the bank, it might be a better time for you to rent right now. If you can't afford, if something were to break, some of these down payment assistance programs, the small print of them is you have to stay in the home for a lengthy period of time, and you can't refinance out of them either. So even if we had somebody that said, oh, this is going to be my forever home, I don't care if I have to be in there 7 years. Well, you can't refinance either. So that means when the rates, if they were to drop in the next 3 to 5 years, they're the one walking around with a 7% interest rate when everybody else has got something lower. So I always try to do my best in seeing if they have any potential family members that could provide gift funds, or if they're uneducated, that they could withdraw from their 401k. They thought they were always taxed on it no matter what. Well, you can withdraw from it for what's called a hardship withdrawal, even though it's not a hardship to purchase a home, but they could withdraw from that as down payment funds. So I try to come up with some creative ways to get them thinking on if they can, I say, get the house with a traditional mortgage versus something like down payment assistance.
Wow, I just learned something. I did not know that you could withdraw without a penalty. Thank you.
Well, you can if you're purchasing your first home. It's called a hardship withdrawal. You can do it for a medical reason or first-time home buyer.
Interesting. Now, there's an issue that, that other than the rate that is affecting so many people that you both I want to speak on is I even bought my house in, let's say, 2014. It was worth 400, and my rate refied in 2020, and I have a 2.875. So now we have it worth, let's say, close to 600. That might be realistic numbers, Christine. And I have this great rate. How can the seller leave, even with that equity, into a 6.875, which is a massive difference? What do you do? What can you team up to do for people?
Go ahead, Zeke.
Oh yeah. So with that, I would, again, they're only going to move if they have to. So job relocation, better school system, unfortunate divorce, things like that. Those are the things that are going to get people out of one home into another home at this time where the rates are higher. But that's just the cards you have dealt to you at the time based on your certain life circumstance. So we do the best we can with working into those and stating the facts of what we have available. Good lenders are going to be able to use additional income sources that the buyer might not think about to increase purchase power. Buying a rate down could also increase purchase power, which could also help, agents make more money. So our job is also to support the agent, support the buyer, and make sure everything lines up for the best scenario we can.
Right. And Christine, what do you say to me? I realize.
So what I would say, because, okay, say you have to move and your interest rate now is 6.5, whatever. My thing, and people keep saying, because I hear it every day, well, I'm going to wait until the rates come down. That's fine. I understand that for the reasons that you're stating, but let me offer a different perspective. Just because the rates are higher now, you can negotiate your home price once. You can negotiate your mortgage as often as the rates come down. The other thing that I'm sharing with clients now is if you wanted to wait, say you want to buy a $500,000 house today, and the interest rate is just say 7%, let's round it up. And you don't want to do that because Zeke, whatever that mortgage payment is, it is. But if you decide to wait, okay, the interest rates come down to 6% because that's what you're waiting for. Well, now the home price has gone to 550. So you've lost that 50,000 in equity if you purchase now. And you don't have as much of that buying power. And your mortgage payment is either similar or a little less, right, Zeke?
Yes, and also you're up against 25 other offers.
Right. So honestly, a higher interest rate right now might get you the house that you want, and you just muddle through until the rates come down to where you are comfortable with refinancing. So it's going to be a struggle if you're at 2.5%, because we're at like 2.75 on our house. It would be a struggle to go up that much on an interest rate for a house that you need because you're moving, divorce, the house you live in is too small or whatever, and then you just muddle through until the rates come down to where you can afford it. But all that time, your home value is still increasing. So you now have equity built up into your home that you're not going to have if you wait for that lower interest rate because the home prices are still increasing.
Interesting. I'll tell you what I did, and I want to know what you think about this. I don't think it's an apples to apples. People talk about mortgage rates. This is an apples to apples. You can't compare a first-time buyer or just a normal person who's staring down the face of 6.875 with another person who just made free money of appreciation. You didn't work for that. You didn't save for that. It just magically happened because of COVID or because of many circumstances. There could be the fact that there's been a gross lack of new construction in the last 10 years because 2010 to 2020 was the least ever built in America. Yes. So I said to somebody, what are you complaining about? The payment's going to be higher. You're spending fake money. You didn't work for this. You just slept in the house. What do you think of that? And they were a little bit annoyed because they thought they had this right to that.
It's true. As an example, I have a client in my neighborhood that she wants to sell her house and buy something bigger. Well, she's done very little to the home. We could list it $350,000 more than what she bought it for 18 months ago.
Oh boy.
So that $350,000 she could put as a down payment if she wanted to, all of it towards the new home, which is going to be a lot more expensive. It'll bring her mortgage payment down some, or she can hang on to the high mortgage payment, keep some of the money in the bank, put some of it down. She has a lot of options now because she has equity from her current home to roll into the new home.
Right, but Zeke can do the math and say maybe we don't want to be cash poor with all that fantastic. And by the way, that's tax free if they're married. $350,000 is free. Where do you get tax free profit? What business has tax free profit? No, you do, the seller. So right. Zeke can figure out, because I can't. Okay, you have all this money sitting in the bank. It's going to cost you X more per month. Why not just roll with that for 5 or 8 years? And who cares?
Right, and just use the equity from the house basically to make those mortgage payments.
Right, because I'm here with no equity. I'm a first-time buyer, and you're here with this much equity. It's fake, imaginary money. Really, it's real money, but you didn't work like everyone else did and save. Right. You just were in the right position
in the bank and use that to pay your mortgage payments on.
Yeah, so, right.
Yeah. There's lots of options. People just don't think out of the box. They're like, oh my God, my mortgage payment right now is
people want their cake.
And then they want to go up, so their mortgage payment is going to be $12,000. Well, guess what? You have $350,000 you can pay on your mortgage payments on for however long you need to. Yeah.
Or Zeke can show them that, worst case, I'm just making up a number, it's $650 more. So 12 months, it's $7,000 out of $350,000. Come on.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you can cry about the number, but when you really break it down, in 7,000, if I'm right, I have no idea. I mean, if I ballpark it, 650 might be the number, right? I don't know. But Zeke can certainly give you to the penny what it is. If you say each year 7,000 more under these.
Yeah, but what I'm talking about would be from, say, $1 million house to a $1.5 million house. That price difference, and they have $350,000 equity in the home that they currently own. So whatever that difference is, based on what they were paying versus what they're going to pay, is what talking about.
No, I agree. So there's two different things. Do you put the money towards the purchase price, or do you maintain it maybe in a place where you're making a few dollars and make payments from that, which buys you a lot of years of relief from the supposed terrible rate increase?
Right. Yeah. So there's options that people just don't think about.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's, yeah, but okay. So that's subject to a preference. But the point here is you two as professionals really having the capability of explaining that in a superior manner than your competition.
Right.
Because they're just going to be scared, period. Rates are up. I can't sell. Rates are up. Christine, well, I can't sell. Well, you can. Here's how.
Right. No, I agree. You just have to, they have to be able to understand it, to see it. If they're not at a point where they're not willing to understand it yet, then you just wait until they.
And these people may not even be trying to understand it because they think they're out of the market, and they hear about those decreases in pricing that you just mentioned. And they maybe even, you just told me it's 23%. Maybe they should sell now before it's 35, 40, because I think it is going to be 35, 40%.
Well, it's possible. I think part of these decreases are the over listing prices that the sellers and the agents are allowing, not necessarily that the values have decreased. Maybe that home was 20% overpriced to begin with, so now it's where it should be. Because the homes that are selling are appraising that. They're appraising for those prices.
Right, but there's no inherent or intrinsic value. It's just what people will pay. So there was such a logjam of offers, like the tulip craze in the 1500s in Holland. The flower wasn't worth thousands of dollars. It was the demand, just like you experienced.
Correct. Yes. Correct. Supply and demand.
So
and we still have that.
That's a really good way to rationalize it, to show that this is the accurate number. So stop, complaining.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that's interesting. So what do we see? I mean, is the summer going to have any consequence to your personal markets? I mean, vacations and school, does that play into anything?
It's Florida. It slows down a little bit right now, just because people are getting out of school here, and they're out of school here and they're taking their vacations. But schools up in the Northeast in New York, they're getting out the end of June. So they're going to do their vacation in July. They're going to come down to Florida and go, oh God, I don't want to go back to New York or Connecticut because it's expensive. And they're going to start house hunting. So
right. And especially in a vacation resort, I've seen this a few times in a few locations. People vacation in an area and say, wait a minute, honey, this is nice. So you have a built-in market as a vacation place.
Correct. Yeah, and we're also on the water.
Sure.
Yeah.
And they're not making any more of that land.
No, they are not making
Zeke,
any more
I know Zeke's entirely competent. And Zeke, do you share these strategies with agents and even this type of dialogue where they might gain from these strategies? I mean, is that one of your ways to market, reach them, and mastermind?
Yes, and also just value adds to them as well, because they're always thinking about how to make deals work, and just things that some loan officers don't even know. When you're putting down 10% on a conventional loan, or the buyer's putting down 10%, you can now ask up to 6% for seller concession, and it goes up to 9%. So a lot of people just think 3% for conventional, and if more can get a deal done, then sometimes that's a very appreciated, because nobody really that I seem to run across knows that little trick.
No, I have your seller concession sheet. I keep it with me.
Yeah. So things like that, like the cheat sheet, and there's a couple page printout that I have for things to look for in an FHA or a VA home. So if you're ever on a listing appointment and you're wondering, I wonder, this doesn't look like it might pass FHA, if you can refer to the little cheat sheet for that too. And then some marketing ways that that they can help them on or help themselves just on social media. Like there's templates from mailers and a whole lot of things that I have for templates up to 3,000. So, you know, you got years and years if you use them every day.
Nice.
That's for sure. Well, I mean, outreach is so important, and I really believe that demonstrating your authority and being accountable like you are and being seen. I've seen some pretty bad realtors with a lot of advertising, and they're seen more than others. So they say, don't be a secret agent. Let people know that you're here, you're able to serve them. And I think the best thing you can do is give others the chance to benefit as well. Then you're together in this versus being treated as an outlier. I think that agents do a terrible job of being part of the business community. They'll serve the business community, but they're not really always in it. They seem to be on this separate category, but they're not in it with a Main Street, part of the tradesman, part of the professional services that are offered. And that's one thing that, you know, I really feel strongly about. I try to integrate myself. And, you know, how many networking events have you gone where there's realtors, Christine? Why should you ever go to one where there's realtors? Why?
Right. No, I hear you a lot.
A lot.
I just pick and choose because I just, you know, I'm a little selective on who I, you know, want to support.
Right. I mean, there's, and
I've seen that part out.
No, it's okay. It's true. I mean, you want to, the great thing about real estate or being self-employed even is you pick who you work with. You don't have to accept every client or any colleague.
Sure.
That's important. Now, I've even seen, and maybe I want to ask you, have you seen this? I've seen deals rejected because of the home inspector, or even in New York, the lawyer that's specified. And they say, wait, we could do a much easier transaction. So buyers don't even know that their offer is denied based on the professionals they choose. Have you come across that?
I have not.
How about you, Zeke? I certainly have.
Well, that's why we don't write prequals. So, I mean, reputation is everything. I think it more is reliant on maybe a lender's perspective. I mean, where have you seen it, Scott? I wouldn't think somebody would turn a deal down because of an inspector or an agent.
Oh, sure. I've been part of that. And if it's someone who's really won't get back to you and wants to make a problem, and inspectors that are crazy, or even in New York, the lawyers that may not be on top of it. You know, in New York, lawyers order title and some wait till the mortgage commitment's in. So that's a two-step process versus simultaneous. That seems to be more of the traditional orthodox approach, but the newer approach is to do it order title simultaneous with the loan app. But there are agents that are really, really protective of maybe their market or their sphere, where there's somebody that they don't want to deal with XYZ inspection because they will give you 14 pages and say that the grass is too green.
Yeah, I can see that. So totally. I know it happens from a loan officer standpoint for sure, because if you're writing stuff and then it doesn't go through or something happens, then our reputation can be tarnished. I had an agent, it's a brokerage down here that I've been trying to get in the door of. And she was the listing agent, the broker was, and the buyer's agent, I had that buyer, and he left me, I think, over about $300, but which I could have met, but he didn't return any of my phone calls or anything. Anyway, he went with the other lender, and then that broker, the day before he was supposed to close, called and said, Zeke, just wondering where we're at in this transaction. And I send weekly updates all the time. So she said, I haven't seen anything from you, which was odd, but I knew you had it under control. Just wanted to check in. Are we closing tomorrow? And I'm like, I am not the loan officer on this anymore. I'm so sorry. The buyer's agent, unnamed, was supposed to call and tell you. She said she would, and that didn't happen. So she was like, oh my gosh. And she's like, the only reason my seller accepted this because you were on the original pre-approval letter. And that made me feel good, because that's what we fight for is the reputation piece. So
Right. And oftentimes it's not based on skill. It's just, do they return a call? Do they make things difficult? It's not that we're incapable, but sometimes, I mean, it's such a personal business. It's, I've never dealt with them, or this guy is sometimes, not able to respond. I mean, lawyers are notorious because they have such a caseload. And the real successful ones I've seen are people who have an office designed and staffed for realtors connection. So have you seen that, Christine, where people, don't have a connection or?
Yes, quite often actually, with agents and home inspectors, lenders even, and appraisers. So, I mean, one of my last deals, the buyer's agent barely spoke to me, wouldn't return phone calls or emails. The lender I never heard from. The appraiser just happened to show up at the house when I happened to be there talking with the seller because we were going over some of the home inspection stuff. So it's just crazy. I mean, the lack of communication and professionalism is just, it's out of control. It's just not acceptable.
And that's something that people, the public should listen to this, because people do not realize how out of control we are. Let's say I'm a seller. Christine's a fantastic listing agent. She's top of the class. She's a great negotiator. She's everything we want. But if a buyer comes in with some realtor who's 14 days in the business, a Zillow lead, and they use some online lender, they don't work with Zeke because it's $17 less a month from this Rocket Mortgage or something. Now my purpose is entirely frustrated. I went out and got the best listing agent, but I can't control what buyer's agent shows up and what lender shows up. It's a really bad system.
Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, that muting thing is the problem. I've had a seller decline an offer because when I called to verify the pre-approval letter, the lender never answered the phone. So my sellers chose not to even accept that offer, because if there's no communication during this process, who's to say there's going to be communication through the rest of the process?
Yeah.
And let's say the buyer is a first-time buyer or really doesn't, do this that often. People live in the house 7-8 years, and you may not even know how prejudiced you are by working with people that you think are capable and competent.
Right. Yep. No, I agree. It's kind of scary for buyers and sellers right now.
Yeah. I mean, look at these people also in the former market that didn't even represent buyers. They just said, oh, you got to offer over asking. What did I need you for? You got to waive appraisal. You got to waive inspection. Why did I just, even though the realtor doesn't pay, even though the buyer doesn't pay the commission, they certainly fund the transaction. That means we just pumped up the price, gave me more money I had to borrow every month. I had to borrow and pay every month for next to no services.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's sad. I mean, I had a lot of that during COVID, a lot of it. Like buyers, agents would call and say, hey, I can't make it to the showing today. Can you just show my clients around? Sure. And then I end up doing a lot of it, but I'm not going to be that person. I'm not that person to the buyer's agent. Well, you owe me a referral fee because I did all the work for you. I just make sure that the buyers understand, I'm sorry, I can't give you this information. This is your agent's responsibility. Please reach out to them. If not, well, then maybe I'll see what I can do to help you. But it's just awful. It's awful. Like I have 2 listings in a couple of weeks. I have 2 listings coming up, and I had an agent call me, hey, Christine, I know you're great in this area. Listen, I have 2 buyers from Chicago. They're looking at houses. Do you have anything coming up? I said, yes. She's like, well, can you go and take video for me when they come up? I'm like, well, when they're listed, I'll have video. She's like, no, can you do it for me now? I'm like, if you want to come up, you want to drive, I will take you to the homes as long as it's okay with the sellers. She said, no, I'm in Dunedin. Can you just do it for me? Still, that was yesterday.
That's a big ask, but
yeah, because I'm doing it because they're my clients, my sellers. I'm going to go above and beyond for my sellers. So if they like either one of these houses, I might be able to get it sold before it's listed. So now I'm doing my job, and I'm doing the buyer's agent's job.
And that's a great reason to hire you. Look what you'll do. Look what you'll assume the role and the obligation of others to make sure those sellers are done. And, your sellers may think that's cool, but they really only care about getting their house sold. So, but that gets you recommendations. Look at Christine. She went way out of her way and she made sure that these buyers were pre-approved by Zeke, because I'm not going there for no reason. I'm going there for a real deal.
Right. No, I understand. So it happens every day.
Yep.
And that's why it's important to have relatable stories, because a seller lists the house. They don't know that they're subject to the pitfalls of parties or professionals that are not on the same page.
Correct. Yep. No, it's scary for the sellers because it's stressful for them to have to put their house on the market. You can't, dictate 60 days, 90 days, 45 days, how long it's going to be on the market before it goes under contract. So every time there's a showing, they have to leave. They have to pack up their animals or their kids. It's just extremely stressful. And then when we end up getting an offer or a contract, then it's continuing to be stressful because the inspector doesn't show up on time or the report doesn't come in on time, or we have to do an extension for the inspection and repair because the buyers couldn't get to it quick enough to go over and make a decision. It's so stressful for the sellers. And I'm the one that has to basically be in the middle between the sellers and the buyer's agent and trying to, make some peace, trying to find a center ground for everybody to work through. So my sellers don't get all bent out of whack and say, you know what, screw it, I'm done. They're not coming back in the house, which they legally can't do because we're under contract. The buyers are like, I want out. I'm like, okay, well, whatever. I already have 4 other offers sitting behind me that I'll be more than happy to call when you decide to send a release and cancellation form. So I'm okay with that too.
Okay, but before we go on, there's inherent stress for a seller because there's a period of time where they're crossing their fingers and their toes to see if the buyer gets a mortgage, and they can't list it. So it's frozen out of the MLS. Correct. So they really have no way to know. If someone doesn't work with Zeke, with whom you have a relationship, you are wondering. And if you were to get that relief you just described, where you can go to a backup offer, who pays your client's mortgage? They just pay for 2 or 3 more months. The price doesn't go up. You're stuck. Those are thrown away money.
Right. No, I know. It's unfortunate that a lot of people don't take other people's, concerns and issues into consideration, and being respectful and professional and, following the actual timelines that we have in a contract.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're going to get to a point. I've heard of some people doing this in high-end places where Christine lists a property and said, you don't have to work with Zeke samples, but I prefer you do, like a builder does. Hey, listen, you don't have to, but you know what? You're in better stead if I could pick up the phone on Saturday, 8:30 in the morning and say, Zeke, what's up with this guy? Has he got all this stuff in? Versus wondering and having no answers for your client. So has anyone considered doing that in your market? Would you do that? Would you utilize that?
I absolutely would. Yes. But it has the seller has to be okay with it.
Yeah.
I can't make that decision for my sellers.
Of course, but why wouldn't they opt for more security? They could meet Zeke. Zeke could say, listen, here's what we want from a buyer. So it's a great team.
Mm-hmm. It's a good idea. Yep. You do that.
One at a time, Scott. One at a time.
The deals are one at a time, but the approach that's an approach, and we know builders do that, and it's met with some resistance. But if you're offering identical rates, there's no tricking, there's no hidden ball trick. Zeke is the person that the seller wants to be comfortable with. So at least he has to have a shot. He can't be excluded.
Right. Well, nobody can be excluded, but I think that's a great idea that Zeke and I'll have to sit down and figure out how to come up with that, like a flyer or something that we can create that I can present to my sellers, present and future, on, this is what we're offering as far as, using a preferred lender. This is what it gets you. It gets you direct communication, guaranteed, I know where Zeke lives. So if he doesn't answer the phone, I can go knock on the door kind of thing. Which is what a lot of my sellers do, because they know where I live. So if I don't answer my phone or text message, it never happened, thank God, but they can show up on my door because everybody knows where I live.
Yeah.
Great. And I think if you're this, I'd love to hear that as a seller. Say, listen, you don't get 2, you don't get 1, you get 2. We got 2 sets of eyes, and I can trust how this source, do you want to subject yourself to people that don't answer the phone? I don't think a seller alive would say no to that. And if you put it on MLS, you're not springing it on anyone. They know. And I'll tell you what, you'd be met with resistance. That's BS. That's not legal. All that. You'd get that. But you know it's legal. And you know that we're just exercising.
Right.
Yeah, and you're just exercising a preference. You're exercising a preference. And, maybe when we do these kind of dialogue, it really masterminds too and makes you think of approaches. Now, you'd be the listing agent that offers a far greater degree of security than your others that take a wash their hands approach.
True. Yes. I already do go above and beyond as a listing agent that a lot of other agents do not do. So, But I'm not going to tell you because it's a secret.
Great. Well, then the public needs to know to hire you.
Well, then they'll find out.
Okay.
And it doesn't cost them anything, the other things that I do as a listing agent. So.
Sure, that's not. And maybe if Zeke or some lender in another state somewhere took this approach and offered some kind of a discount, they'd have even a greater benefit. Maybe an offer can't be matched.
Right. I agree.
Yeah, I love the idea. It's as I said 3 times, builders do it, and they may not want to work with somebody who's maybe not even the area. You could get a lender from. I know what happened in New York. For me, we live about an hour or so from the city. They would send appraisers from the city. They have no idea the neighborhood. They haven't been there maybe ever.
Ever, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we get appraisers coming in from like St. Pete or Lakeland that have never been to Apollo Beach and didn't know how to get there until that day. And you're going to appraise properties when you're like Lakeland, you're landlocked. You don't have ocean or the Gulf or Tampa Bay. You're going to appraise the value of a water. Okay.
Right.
So why do banks do that, Zeke? How's that even done?
Well, that's why you have not all banks have the same system. So there's actually one of the investors I have my personal mortgage with. They're the number 1 lender in the country, and they have what's called appraisal direct. So it actually doesn't. They don't have an AMC, which has a pool of appraisers, and then you get this random appraiser from another part of town. Appraisal direct pays the appraiser 100%. So there's no AMC that's got their hand in the cookie jar. And then there's, it's basically a local appraiser, number 1. Number 2, the communication is there. So what Christine was mentioning earlier in the video, everybody that's involved gets an email that says when the appraiser has been scheduled, or when the appraisal has been scheduled, and when the appraiser is going to be there. So the time is there, and then you get an email saying the appraiser has completed the inspection. So everybody knows that too. It's just different levels, and not every lender is the same. And these are the parts that we like to share and explain to people when they're shopping and trying to choose somebody.
I totally agree. Rates are rates, and that's an interesting thing. People say rates are rates, but the manner and the mechanism in which loans are underwritten and the service that are provided, that's the distinction. And look, this is not a computer. People have to go to bed on Fridays comfortable. They're not stressing all weekend. That's, to me, everything. That's making someone say, oh, it went smoothly versus, oh, we closed. They're not going to talk about the rate because it's like a rainy day. We all got the same rainy day. It's right. How do we handle it? And who was there for us?
Right.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I found that as a professional in the legal profession and as a realtor and with different companies that it's who you align yourself with. And from a business networking standpoint, that's really how we've derived so much business over time. That providing, and I hate to say providing value, but giving a reason to work with someone is paramount. And as you do, and I commend you for hosting this platform, so many people who are hearing you have the opportunity to promote their business. That really earns your attention versus some email or some social media blast or some random message. This makes it makes your your platform that much more valuable, because we're here to benefit so many others.